Hi, everybody in podcast land and also on YouTube. The day has come. Every decision I've made in my life has culminated in this moment. I get to finally
find out if you're a replicant.
Oh, God.
Do your eyes glow?
Try to look up to the left. They don't glow.
Interlinked.
Oh,
cells. One stem, etc.
I'm way off baseline.
Yeah, dude.
I'm very excited.
I'm excited.
This is, I think it's got to be in my top 3 movies ever. I love this movie. I love it.
Wow.
Blade Runner 2049, folks.
It's a movie.
It's a good movie.
And it's slow.
I'm giving it a 9.5.
Wait, what? You're supposed to give your rating last.
I'm doing it today, now,
What the heck's
first.
going on
Subversion,
here?
just like everything that happens in this movie.
And you know what my slogan is?
Yeah.
If you don't like this movie, we're not friends.
Oh, dang,
Mine was
dude.
close to that.
Whew.
You don't like this movie?
The pressure's on.
I'm gonna just we can be friends. We can be friends. But there's something about you that's we're never gonna be soulmates.
Yeah. No, I can dig that.
Something wrong with you.
Because it's like the quality is, well, we'll get into it.
It's so high.
Yeah.
It's so high. Okay, I'll give a caveat to those people who are listening. They're like, well, I don't love that movie, and I like James. If you want to be my friend still,
Get better.
I don't blame someone for not liking it the first time. Watch it 3 or 4 more times, then we can have a sleepover. You can come to my birthday.
It's a mood, and you have to be in it.
This movie is such a mood.
Such a mood.
You also have to be into slow movies. Like, before this eked its way into my top 3, I probably would have had, maybe I still do, have 2001 Space Odyssey in there. And I like 2001, so if you're not even going to put up with that kind of slow crap, then
no way.
You might not like Blade Runner.
How long is 2001: A Space Odyssey? Do you know?
2.5, 240.
I'll look it
really?
up. David,
So it's around the same.
yours.
Okay. Blade Runner 2049 demands your attention from the opening shot, and if you give in, you'll get an experience that manages to surpass the landmark original in almost every way.
Damn.
9.7.
Wow.
2001
9.7?
Oh, shit. Dave.
This is as good as
I think
movies.
we need to constrain.
This is as good as movies get.
I want to constrain you to round like 0.5s only.
I don't want to. I want to give him free reign, as many sig figs
Well,
as he
but then
wants.
it just brings up so many questions every time. I'm like, why? Where are those extra 2 decimal points coming from?
Well,
Do you actually
allow him to explain.
The decimal points are completely subjective anyways. You don't have an objective measure.
Well, I mean, ratings are always in fluctuation. Every time you watch a movie, it changes. Every time you think about it, it's shaping the way you think about that movie. And so,
But you got to be able to explain why it's a 9.7 instead of a 9.5.
okay. So there is no 10. There's no perfect movies.
But what's that 0.2? What is that little
Yeah,
0.2?
why not 9.5?
Why is it 9.5?
Yeah.
Because I need granularity in my ratings. Because
Well, yeah,
there's
but
movies that there's thousands of 9s, and I need to be able to categorize the different 9s into which ones are better. Because a 9.5 is The Incredibles or something like that, where it's a really incredible movie and it's a perfect package. But then there's certain things I look for in movies that aren't fully executed there. Whereas in Blade Runner, there's nothing in a movie that I like that I'm not getting.
Are there not enough 9.7s for you to need a next decimal place?
I could, but then it gets too hard. Then it, I'm not ready for that level of
Wait. I know the answer to this. I mean, I don't know the answer, but do you have do you catalog all your ratings?
Not all the time. I've definitely started doing it more. I started categorizing a list of every animated movie after the Pixar list.
Yeah.
And right now I have 200 animated movies that I've seen that they're ranked.
But that's not you don't make that ranking after you see it.
It's later.
You're doing this based on memory.
Yeah, and I mean, if I
I'm
was
poking
scientific,
holes, man.
If I was being scientific about it, I'd watch it, then give it a rating.
Well, now that you've got it established, you can do that going forward, especially if you can access it via mobile.
I would recommend you do so, and maybe I'll be less frustrated.
2001 Space Odyssey is 2 hours, 44 minutes.
Okay. Oh, so it's almost the same. This is 2:43 with the credits.
That movie feels longer, though, for sure.
2001?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's
I don't
pretty
know.
damn slow, man.
But I did watch it when I was in university, and I had a ton of extra free time, so I guess maybe it didn't seem as long to me.
That's fair.
Were you watching it at 2 in the afternoon or something?
No, I probably watched it late into the night.
You must have had a coffee.
What do you mean?
It's slow, man.
Dude, I'm hyper focused when I'm watching. I do not fall asleep in movies unless I'm completely exhausted.
Damn, man. But wait a second, though, because this episode is brought to you by Private Internet Access. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so you can bypass geo restrictions and censorship. You can connect up to 5 devices at once, and it includes an internet kill switch. Hit me, Riley. You use that if your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even as a dang Chrome extension, so check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolpia if you're not a replicant.
Those Chrome extensions. Taste good.
Okay, Riley, Mr. Keeper of No Lists.
I don't keep a single list.
I'm listless.
I hate lists. I'm listing here in the storm. That's
What?
That's another.
Just give me your number. Jesus.
Another use for the word list. I gave it 9 out of 10. The first movie's success was not only replicanted. In fact, this is an upgraded model.
Nice. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit relieved that you gave it a 9. I was worried you were gonna give it like a 7, and we were gonna have to fight about how good this movie is.
Such a low opinion of me, David.
No, you're a brilliant man.
We did fight about how good this movie is in the carpool back in the day, like a year ago.
We did.
Because Riley watched it on a plane.
Yep. And
He's
this
like,
one
"It's
wasn't that
okay."
different.
Hey, you're on a laptop.
Yep.
Damn it!
Jesus.
Stop it.
But this is interesting. I don't really value the sensory experience portion of movies that much, I guess.
Huh.
Like, I'll go to a theater for like a big action movie because I know that like it's fun to see these things happening on a big screen or whatever. But this one doesn't have any particular like spectacle, big explosions,
It's not about
3D
that.
moments.
For me, it's not about that. In this movie, the sound editing and the soundtrack is so awesome. You actually get like nuance of the world from the sound design. In that like very first scene where Kay's spinner, which is the name of their flying vehicles, it enters frame and just goes by, and it's just like putters by.
Yeah.
Even the sound of that putter, you're like, oh, it's the future, and they're flying cars, but some of them are pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome.
It gets you
dude.
there. I can hear things.
I tried to give this guy free tower speakers a couple weeks ago. It's like, what do they look like? They're not minimal enough.
They're not going to go with the aesthetic.
Man.
Well, I don't think I'm even going to have tower speakers. I'm just going to have like a sound bar maybe.
Get out.
You guys are so
Get outta
TV
here.
setup elitist.
I took a soundbar home.
Some people can't afford tower speakers.
Soundbars.
They were free. I was giving you for free.
Not me. I can afford it. I'm just saying, so, don't make people feel
to get
bad.
the best, absolute best soundbar in existence, it'd be like $2,000, and it sounds less good than like $1,000 surround sound setup.
I'm not going to install surround sound
You
in
don't
my
have to
living room.
install.
Yeah, I'm
You
going
plug
to
a
have that's so much
cable in.
extra stuff in there. Ugh,
yeah,
cables,
but I'm not-
cables running everywhere. Get out of here.
Oh, well, you could just have two.
Guys,
just have 2 towers front and left.
You don't understand.
Isengard.
My apartment after these renovations are complete is gonna look like a miniature ballroom of like a wealthy person in the Blade Runner universe.
Wow.
All wood.
But like in the size of like a 600 square foot apartment.
Hell yeah.
So
It's gonna look like
they got no
Neander
room-
Wallace's bathroom.
yeah, I got no room. I got no room for surround speakers. All right, it's just clutter.
Yeah, I admit it. It's priorities. It's all about priorities.
So what happens in this movie?
I can tell you.
Oh yeah, synopses.
Did you watch it?
Let us hear it.
In 2049, bioengineered humans called replicants are slaves. One replicant called K is a Blade Runner, tasked with hunting and killing rogue replicants. Replicants cannot reproduce, but K discovers the remains of one replicant who died during a C-section and then is ordered to find and destroy the child. K is. Meanwhile, Neander Wallace, head of the Wallace Corporation, wants the child for himself so he can understand replicant reproduction and mass produce them. K discovers evidence that indicates he is the child in question and goes to Las Vegas to question his potential father, former Blade Runner Rick Deckard.
Harrison Ford!
Han Solo in his third iteration. Love, Wallace's replicant enforcer, tracks him there, kidnaps Deckard, and leaves K to die. K is rescued by rebel replicants who reveal that K is not the child and ask him to kill Deckard to keep their secret safe. K rescues Deckard from being interrogated by the Wallace Corporation, stages his death, Deckard's, and brings Deckard to meet his daughter as K makes a low-effort snow angel.
Aw. He dies there with the...
Does he die there?
Yeah.
I didn't
think it's
really get that.
ambiguous.
Some people think it's ambiguous, but the screenwriters did not intend it to be ambiguous. They
Right.
thought because they were using the musical motif from like Tears and Rain from
Yeah.
the first one, that it was pretty clear that he died there.
Well, honestly, I was confused about that because in the movie, Deckard's like, "Are you okay?" And like as if like, "Are you emotionally okay?" And Kay's just kind of like, he just doesn't really answer
You
whatever.
think he says it that way?
Well, that's how I read it.
Deckard would never ask that. He doesn't give a fuck about your feelings.
I mean, in hindsight, it seems that kind of makes sense because it's like, how many times is Kay like stabbed and injured in this movie in various ways? I'm like, he can only take so much punishment, even though he's a replicant.
The replicants are much more durable.
Yeah. So the only time that it actually entered my mind that he was potentially fatally wounded in that encounter with Love is when I read it on the Wikipedia, where it's like he is fatally wounded or mortally wounded. And I'm like, oh, geez, what? I had no idea. I thought he was just like chilling on the steps there being like, life's crazy, huh?
No, he's dead. and his character arc doesn't require him to be alive. No. It's all done.
Right. Unless
What a
there's a
character
sequel again.
No, stop.
Blade Runner 2089.
So I think we need to talk about why this movie works. And part of it, I think, is that it took 40 years to make it. I think just like Mad Max, and it's interesting, that was the closest we ever had in our polls.
For which movie we should do this week.
Those of you that aren't following us on Twitter, you should, because we do a poll every week asking which movie we're going to do.
Yeah.
And
Mad Max, Children of Men,
28
Blade
Days
Runner,
Later.
and 28 Days Later.
And Mad Max and Blade Runner were actually tied for percentage, but Blade Runner had a few more votes. But I think
both at 37%.
both at 37%.
And actually, the audience did me one better because I thought that they were going to pick Mad Max and 28 Days Later for sure.
I think 28 Days Later is a bit more of like a cult classic than like a...
Well,
I
yeah,
think
zombies
A
is
lot
for
of people
particular
were mentioning it.
Yeah, I love 28 Days Later.
It's a good movie.
But I thought that would be up there also.
But what I think is interesting is that Mad Max is brilliant because the director, George Miller, thought about that movie for 20 years.
Right.
And in the same way, Blade Runner, like from different parties, there wasn't one person thinking about it, but from the original short story that this whole story is built off of, and a lot of the visuals, these are people that have been thinking about Blade Runner for 40 years.
Yeah.
And they've really thought about it so well. And I think that's part of why this movie is so good, is that it is like as well thought out as a movie has ever been.
The original screenplays were also done by those same people. The original screenwriter from the first one, and Ridley Scott was involved in it as well. And then,
Oh, really?
yeah, and then they brought in, I believe, an additional screenwriter after that.
Well, okay, and so another parallel with Mad Max that's really cool is that you might know that Mad Max has no script. It's just storyboarded over decades of time. So you just came up with these ideas, these visuals to tell the story.
The original or Fury Road?
Fury Road.
Okay.
But this one was also, basically they had a script, but then Roger Deakins and Denis Villeneuve locked themselves in a hotel room with storyboard artists for weeks. And
For
then
this movie?
For this movie. And they came up with basically every visual, the style, the movement, the language.
Really?
Yeah, and that's
of this
unusual.
movie.
The director involving the cinematographer that early in the process was unusual. But they had worked together already on Arrival.
And Sicario,
Oh, okay.
Dang.
which are also fucking awesome movies.
And Denis Villeneuve is doing Dune. Oh, no.
Oh boy, is he ever?
Is he? Yeah?
Yeah.
Is Roger Deakins involved in that?
No.
Ah.
Oh, wow.
Denis Villeneuve is, he said that he was a huge fan of the original Blade Runner.
Yeah. And that's
And
why he didn't originally want to do it. He was like,
Right.
that's just a bad idea.
He's
to do
like,
a
I don't want to
sequel
do a
your favorite."
sequel.
He
Yeah.
said it was one of the movies that kind of contributed to him wanting to be a director. It's like, it's foundational, right? You watch
Right.
that and blows your mind.
What do you guys think of the original Blade Runner?
Yeah, it's good. It's pretty slow. It's a cult classic. Some people
Yeah.
really love it, but a lot of people just think it's boring.
I think when I watched it, I definitely understood why it was a cult classic and not like a classic, because I can totally understand why people, like Lauren was like ready to quit out at like halfway. She was just like, it's so slow. And I'm like, unless you're somebody who's like really interested in these kind of like world building exercises and like looking at every tiny thing in the background to like glean all these details, and I don't know, the kind of like a slow introspective kind of adventure. Like,
Totally.
Yeah, and it has some wacky stuff too. Like Rutger Hauer's head like busts through a brick wall and like starts talking to Deckard like during that final fight. It's just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
goofy. But
I think, yeah.
there's a lot of good stuff in it, like the soundtrack, the visuals, obviously like the production design. It's all crazy. It's just that there's some kind of weak stuff in there with it.
Oh, I just think the sequence of Rutger Hauer dies is one of the most beautiful sequences in cinema, even to this day. And I think that holds up. But I agree. Everywhere else, there's a lot of rough edges. A lot of the groundbreaking technology that went to telling that story is very dated.
yeah.
But I mean, it's still.
So if this one's so much better, then why didn't this one slay the box office?
The original one didn't slay either.
Yeah, I think it's the same kind of reasons, where it's just kind of like, the Blade Runner is not the kind of like Star Wars level huge cultural classic type of thing. It's a bit of a cult classic. So there's definitely, there's that base to build off of, but I don't think there were as many people like stoked to see it come back.
When okay, I'm about to sound like a fucking asshole. This is a smart people's movie. And it doesn't spell out what's happening, but it communicates so much information with very little. Whereas most movies would give you the information in one scene and maybe repeat it in a later scene, or have people like say it out loud, declare intentions. This one is using its scenes to tell you information either visually with a cut or a moment or a reaction, and there's not much said. And so it's not about being smart or dumb. It's about being fluent in film language and understanding what's being communicated through the language of film. Like you think about the scene where Kay is being debriefed by his superior officer.
Joshi.
By Joshi. Joshi, is that her name?
Robin Wright.
Oh, Mario rides her later. That's cool.
What?
Joshi?
Ah, that just came off weirdly sexual. I had no idea what you're talking about.
And I was like, Robin Wright, and you're like, Mario rides Robin Wright.
So
I'm like,
yeah,
who?
That scene, the police debrief. So it accomplishes 4 purposes in like less than a minute. One is to accentuate what a huge deal the fact that a replicant can reproduce is, and then it also gives him his quest for the movie: find this person, eliminate them.
Right.
But then it also poses the question, the thematic question of the movie: what is a soul?
Yeah.
And then it also does like specific character building for both characters in like less than a minute, but it's very quick, very sophisticated film language.
It's succinct, but not in a way that like crams all of these details in, like
Totally.
with words. It just like communicates it with body
However,
language.
David,
And
I have to push back a little bit because you said that it doesn't repeat itself. This movie does, though. There actually are scenes at the end where they show clips or hear voiceover from previously in the movie. You see Sapper again saying, "You've never seen a miracle," and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they do remind you. And I think actually that was a good choice because it is kind of hard to follow this movie.
I appreciated that, but when those scenes popped up, I did think like, oh, that's kind of like I feel like it does take away from the artistic integrity of the movie, because it's like, remember, but at the same time I was like, okay, a lot of people are going to be seeing this without having seen Blade Runner, so especially the parts where they like, hark back to Deckard and Rachel and their relationship and stuff, I think I appreciated that on the part of people who hadn't seen the first one.
Well, what's crazier too is like there's so many different versions of the original, and many of those versions have a voiceover. They have Harrison Ford very dispassionately explaining what's happening to make it simpler for audiences.
Yeah, so there's like the theatrical cut. We're not reviewing the original Blade Runner here, so we shouldn't talk too much about this, but there's a cut where Harrison Ford didn't want to be in it, and so he reads the voiceover and he just hates what he sewered it. He sewered it because he didn't believe in it.
Yeah. Oh
Brutal.
my goodness.
I think what killed this movie at the box office is actually just comes down to the runtime.
Right.
Like, not only, maybe you're not that interested in the nostalgia factor, maybe you don't care that Harrison Ford's in it. I mean, there's a lot going for you, but at the end of the day, you can only have maybe 2 showings a day or 3 at a movie theater for a movie that's that long.
Yeah,
so it's just
that's true.
Couldn't see it.
I wrote down that I forget at what point in the movie I wrote this down, but I wrote down the runtime of this movie is indulgent, like it's self-indulgent, like it's like the director and cinematographer are like, you know what, we're gonna take as long as we friggin' want with this shot. Like, I love this shot. Keep it for 10 more seconds.
I want to push back. I don't think it's overindulgent. I think it's just like it's what it demands and deserves.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like
you can make that argument for
like what shot are you talking about? Like, for example, when
lots of them.
Near the beginning when Kay is flying over LA, you hear those big drums and everything, and he's just flying over the density of LA.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. There's no dialogue. You're just like, some aerial shots. But it's so awesome, and it just tells you everything about the world. The world is full. Look at that seawall they built. Look at the light peeking through those towers. Like, it's crazy how dense it is.
Yeah, look how the districts are built, so you can see how the billboards are, where people are living, and like what kind of city is below. It's very good information.
Look how you can't see that far because there's so much pollution.
I don't think I necessarily mean those type of shots. I mean the shots where they like are staying on Kay's face for a long time, or like staying on someone else's face for a long time, or it's a wide shot and someone's kind of walking across, and it's just like.
But it looks so good.
I know it looks so. And I'm just saying that like. It's nice for the people who want to be there. It's nice for the people who want to just like soak up more of it. But I think when I watch a movie like this, I'm thinking about how other people are also experiencing it, and I think a lot of people think it's too long.
I think
and
that's
it would be
fair.
a lot more accessible if they just kind of cut some of the. They cut a bunch of shots by like 3 or 4 seconds.
They could probably shave off 15 minutes doing that.
Oh yeah.
Did you know there was a 4-hour cut of this
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Isn't that
I don't know if I
insane?
want to see that.
No, I like what they did.
Yeah, and that's the dilemma is that I do think that it's self-indulgent, but like I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. Like I would much prefer this to be one movie than 2 movies. I was thinking while I was watching, I'm like, could this be 2 movies? In terms of length, sure, but would I want it to be 2 movies?
absolutely
no.
not.
I think I was thinking about it a lot this time. The breaks in intensity really allow you to think. And I
Right.
think that's the strength of this movie is they'll pose a question and then they'll give you a moment to breathe and think about it. There's a lot of shots of walking down a hallway and the lights changing or the water reflections doing something. And on this rewatch, now that I've watched it 4 or 5 times, I start to like be like, oh, like the water reflecting is telling the story. And like the fact that it's an artificial light source reflecting through the water is telling a story versus later when the replicants come to Kay and are like, hey, we're the rebellion, we're doing this. It's a natural light source bouncing off the water. That tells a
Right.
story. And I start to tune in again on a deeper level in this
Right.
movie.
Oh, you're big brain, man. I was noticing that water reflection in that rebel meeting scene at the end, and I was like, that's really similar to the Wallace lighting. What's up with that?
It's a dark reflection.
I didn't put it together.
I definitely got more from this the second time because the first time I watched it on a plane and it was fine. The second time I watched it on a 17-inch laptop.
17 inches?
This one. Much bigger screen. Oh, it's indulgent how big this screen was. And I saw a bit more of those details and I was like, so like, for example, that scene where he meets with the replicants or whatever, I don't think I quite got that he was mourning Joy in that scene. Like Joy gets killed and he's sad about it. But I think in that scene, there's like very little dialogue between him and I think
Freza?
Mariette. She's the
Mariette,
prostitute.
Yeah, the chick from Terminator Salvation.
Yeah.
Not Salvation.
I didn't.
Dark Fate.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's that girl. She's great.
Mackenzie.
Yeah. Mackenzie Davis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got there.
And so he's having that moment with her, and they're saying very little, but like you see on his face that he's sad or whatever. But then I'm like, oh wait, he's had an intimate moment with Mackenzie Davis. Like it was as a proxy for Joy, but like they've had that connection. So I feel like he's in that moment with her having this mourning moment. I was like, oh, I didn't really get that the first time. And it's things like that where you just kind of. The first time around, I feel like I missed a ton of this movie in terms of just like following the plot.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, wait, so there's a child somewhere. He thinks he's a child, but then
When you write it down in bullet points, it's not a complicated plot.
Yeah,
but it does
it's
take
not.
a couple of viewings to fully internalize it.
I think it's because of how long it is.
It could be.
I agree.
You forget. You're like, wait, what's going on?
I think there is a high level of buy-in to enjoy this movie. And you have to be willing to engage with the movie on its level, not an entertainment level.
Right.
And so, yeah, you have to be focusing on those details and really appreciating and really processing. You can't just sit back and relax.
There's so many good details. I noticed some last night. Probably my 6th time seeing it.
What?
Details
detail?
I'd never noticed before. Like, just good storytelling stuff. Like, in one of the first scenes when Kay is at Sapper's house,
Yeah.
he walks in his house and there's a pot boiling on the table, right? And then finally Sapper comes in. Kay's sitting there and he's like, Sapper knows who he is. Oh, you're here to kill me because you're a Blade Runner. And what does he say? He offers him some garlic. Sapper grows garlic on his farm. He's like,
Right.
do you want to try it? And Kay says, I like to keep an empty stomach until the hard part of the day is over.
Right.
And so the subtext that both characters know is like, until I'm done fighting or maybe killing you, I'd rather not eat. And then, so that's the most tense thing that's said in that scene so far. And what happens after he says that? The camera cuts back to a close-up of that pot. The pot's still boiling, the lid on it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Like everything is about to boil
The
over.
tension is.
It's like, that's just a great little symbol.
See, I'm gonna push back on that one. That image of the kettle boiling over, that's been done.
That's some film school bullshit.
That's some film school bullshit. No, like we've seen that before. Like I think Shaun of the Dead has that where the kettle's boiling, and like that's an image I've seen, and it's a good image, and it's strong, and it's got an audio and a visual cue.
I think it's a.
That one stood out to me.
I don't know. I never picked up on that before. In the past, when I see that the pot boiling, the first thing I think of is like, oh, he was in there recently. I didn't see it as a symbol
That's
like that.
I think that it's a testament to the ambiance of this movie that it didn't really occur to me that I'm like, oh, that's a ham-fisted metaphor for what's going on.
It's not ham-fisted. I don't.
Yeah, it's not. Well, no, I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm saying that it's been done. This has been done before, but I feel like in other movies that don't have as much gravitas and like ambiance and like the presence, you're just like, you might be like, okay, I get it, the boiling point's going off, but this one it just seems so natural in the world that it works.
Okay, David, here's another one. This is so dense. There's so much in so few lines. It's crazy. When they reveal Joy, Kay comes home to his apartment. He's got a girlfriend there. The audience doesn't know yet that he's just talking to his assistant, right?
That's
So
cool.
you hear, okay, first of all, you hear her call from the other room. She's like, oh, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Like, an assistant, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's omnipotent. It could have just been
Right.
there. But instead, she makes it sound like she's in the other room, which adds to the realism of the product, which is cool. And to the audience. You don't know yet, right? Mm-hmm. And then she says, are you going to make a drink? Like, make me a drink too.
Yeah.
So they're just leading you to believe she's real, right? But then they start to throw in these random little hints. Like, she says that she's making a new recipe tonight, but Kay's already picked up like this bowl of noodles. So it's like, wait, why is he eating if she's cooking? And then she just like, he puts on a song and she puts out this like nobody asked for this level of detail. She's like, oh, did you know that this song came out in 1966 on Reprise Records? And it was #1 in the charts. It's like, huh?
Yeah, that was
like,
a weird...
No one would say that, but your Google Assistant would say that, right?
Your Google Assistant girlfriend.
And she also says, she says, I'm getting cabin fever. Like she's bored of staying in the house. But like, is that product placement for their own product? The
That's
Emanator?
what I was wondering too this time.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, when he brings home the Emanator and he's like, I got a gift for you, and she's so excited. I was like, the first time I watched it, I just assumed, oh, she's actually excited to get this Emanator that'll allow her to leave the house, go places. But on this rewatch, I'm like, she's totally programmed to be excited about a new additional product from this product line.
And that's interesting, but that's like one of the dilemmas for me when I watch this movie is because I'm like, all right, the whole idea of this universe is that there are these people who are treated as products. So in the last one, we didn't really see AIs, we just saw replicants. And in this one, they've added it on that like, oh, and there are also like what appear to be fully sentient AIs who are also being held in slavery, you know? But the question is, does she seem so sentient and loving and legit because the programming's so good and that's what she's programmed to be? Or is she actually just like a person?
Well, I think that's
it's
part
both.
of... Yeah, I think that's part of the brilliance of this movie is that there's kind of a more closed answer to, are replicants alive? Are they human? Are they, or whatever? Do they have sentience? And so they have to open up the question from another angle and approach it from that angle. And I think they have a different answer for that. And I think that's what's interesting is replicants kind of are human. When they become self-aware, when they give themselves purpose, when they have a reason for existence, they get a soul.
Well, they're 100% human.
Yeah, they're just humans without childhoods. I think that's
what bothers me about this.
They opened up this tier of AI because from the first movie to the second movie, the replicants kind of changed what strata they were on. In the first movie, it's like they're just slaves, and it's actually almost like they kind of are robotic in a way.
Replicants?
Because like there's a person who engineers the eyes.
When they didn't have implanted memories to begin with, so they were a lot more like robotic and unstable and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's why they say in the first one they say they implant memories to make their emotions more stable and stuff.
But Rachel is the first one who gets implanted memories.
Okay.
She's a prototype one that like Roy Batty and all the other ones.
They're next to 6. She's like a 7.
They have 4-year lifespans and they don't get implanted memories, so they're all basically like psychopaths because they can't empathize.
So in this one though, they're all citizens. They're not illegal. They're not getting hunted down. They're not just for working off-world.
Well, they're not citizens per se, but they're embedded in.
Sure.
Yeah,
but
they live among us.
They're slaves.
But they've also, part of the reason why Wallace is successful is he's been able to make replicants that have no free will. That they are fully bought into the slave system and they don't care, they're this, and that's why they're allowed to exist, whereas the old Tyrell ones need to be eliminated.
And it's so awesome. The beginning of Kay's arc is him in that scene that you were describing with Joshi, where he says, I've never retired something with a soul before, when he's directed to go kill the child.
Yeah.
And you can see, that, like, why does that matter to him? It's because he's internalized the prejudice. He's like, I am different.
Right.
The replicants are not human. We are on a different level. We deserve
And you
less.
see that when he's walking through the police department and he's like ducking his head as people are like, fucking skin job.
You know what I love? it's cool that there's like slang words, like calling him a skin job, but it's better when there's more than one slang. And he goes home to his apartment and someone wrote Skinner on his door.
Yeah,
That's awesome when there's like variation on it.
Speaking of derogatory things, Jared Leto.
What do you mean?
Fuck Jared Leto.
It's a slur.
You don't like him?
Jared Leto's name is a slur.
He's been canceled.
Really?
Yeah, for text
For his
grooming underage
Oh,
girls.
and like his
and
cult?
for being gone during the coronavirus.
Oh, I don't know about that.
He went
But-
on like a retreat.
This was the
before, though.
first.
But wait, doesn't Jared Leto, isn't he in something sweet that's coming out soon?
I didn't know Jared Leto was canceled.
He's like James Franco canceled.
Oh,
Where
so
you're
like
like,
not really canceled.
Yeah, like we should cancel him, but
Like he's late night.
late night.
He's late.
He did,
He's late night now.
They moved into a Tuesday slot.
there was like a cancel threshold. He didn't get to it.
I found this was the first time I rewatched the movie, and I didn't absolutely love him because I before I would have said he was perfect for that casting, and that he was so he's perfect as this like weird, creepy, smooth, weirdo
With his
persona.
like God.
Yeah, God complex.
He's like,
and
"I'm
remind me to
taking
come back
this-"
to him versus Tyrell later. But
Okay.
I found on this rewatch, I didn't enjoy him as much, and so I actually looked up who the original person who was supposed to play that role.
Will Smith.
David Bowie.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But
And
he died.
But I was like, oh, that would have been good. It got me
That would have
thinking,
been
and I was
good.
like, who would I have preferred in that role? And I thought of two other people, and I want to hear what you guys think. Either Javier Bardem or Mads Mikkelsen. And Mads Mikkelsen is my top choice for that role.
Ooh.
Uh,
As much as I would love to see Mads Mikkelsen in that role, I feel like it's too on the nose for him.
I agree. And I think only Jared Leto would have done what he did with it, which is way more out there and creative.
Yeah.
Only Jared Leto is going to sit across from Harrison Ford and scooch up in his chair and start and just like blindly grope at his thigh and grab him. And you know,
it's like I can see Jared Leto doing that because he's a freak.
Yeah, he was great. And
Gives
I love that he
beats
wears
to
these
his
jammies.
castmates.
I love that he lives in this like all wooden lair because wood is like
Right.
people haven't even seen trees before.
Yeah.
And his whole house is made with it. And he just wears jammies. He's
They're nice jammies.
I think when I had the same thought about Jared Leto because where I was like, oh, this is just like him trying to get some cool role that like he thinks is gonna show off his acting or whatever because he's freaking God's gift to man. And like at that point, when in the first scene where he comes up, Lauren and I were watching it together, and she was like, "Oh, fuck Jared Leto."
yeah, well.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing that I only picked up on this rewatch, because I rewatched Blade Runner, the OG one, fairly recently, is the compare and contrast between Tyrell and
Neander.
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 Wallace. Is it supposed to sound like Neanderthal? Is that like the point of it?
He got
I
bullied
doubt
in
it.
school for that. You know he did.
Neander. That's why he.
That's where he
became.
had to
He's
be
like, I have to
God.
make my own friends.
Yeah.
So speaking of his lair, and it's like this huge open space with like very simple shapes, elegant light, and he's someone who's like obsessed with becoming a god. He's not obsessed with creating life as much as he is with himself becoming a god. Whereas Tyrell in the original wasn't obsessed about being God. He was obsessed with creating life. And when you look at his space, it's actually much more filled, and there's a lot of organic shapes. And like in like a normal sci-fi film, chess pieces are going to be very like sci-fi straight edges, very
Right.
kind of whatever. But in that one, it's very ornate, classical things, and like his whole apartment is filled with lush colors, classical shapes, organic figures.
Right.
And it tells a story very like simply between those two men of one who was wanting to create life, and that's why he created replicants that could create life, versus a man who was obsessed with himself becoming God.
So you think Tyrell's the good guy?
No one's a good guy.
Okay.
They're all bad.
Well, one went bankrupt and the other
Kay's a
didn't,
good guy.
He's not a guy.
He's not your buddy, guy.
Guy. Hey, I'm not your buddy, Kay.
Man, what do you guys think of that scene where the replicant is born and Jared Leto
Just disposes of her.
disposes of her? What do you guys think of
Crazy scene.
great scene.
The performance of the actor of the
Oh, yeah.
replicant. I don't even know her name.
Right.
So underrated. It's so awesome how she kind of comes online. Like she's just kind of breathing and gasping like
That
a
was
baby
so
deer.
cool.
And then she eventually is like he's groping her face and she's not even opening her eyes yet. It's
That's like
awesome.
that's the type of performance you see in a movie where you're just like, oh, this is straight up. This is art. Like this actor is an artist
Yeah,
because
she
it's
must be a
like
dancer.
you have to think about like, okay, we're showing this scene where you know this fake human gets born, quote unquote, and you have to like pretend to be like you know this basically like a fetus learning how to that you just got born into this world, and it's just like how do you interpret that? It was just great. She's just kind of like spasming.
Yeah.
And just kind of like slowly sort of learns to lift her head and stuff. It was just great.
Plus she has to be in that vacuum sealed bag and slurp out.
Yeah.
And hit the grate.
Man, I have to be honest with myself and say that emotionally the setup in this universe just like bothers me. And it's supposed to bother you. But I'm just like, man, what did I what did I write?
What do you mean? I want to know here.
Well, it's slavery. It's like slavery comes back.
Yeah.
But it's even worse because we're not even like taking existing people and enslaving them. We are creating custom built people and enslaving them.
Well, that's exactly why cognitive dissonance will allow it. That's exactly why people would be like, "Oh, this is fine."
Well, okay, and that's
different than us.
That's the question for me, I guess, is because like, would humans ever get to the point? And that's I have to balance this movie as like this takes place in the future because obviously the original was made in 1982 or something, and it portrayed 2019 as like we in 30 years or 40 years we'll master synthetic humans or whatever. And the original portrayed what like could conceivably be at the time a real future, but now we know that this is like an alternate universe.
It's an alternate timeline because Atari still exists.
Atari survives, yeah, and so it's like some cognitive dissonance for me where I'm like, okay, is this an alternate universe where we're just saying humans are absolute shit, or is this like a real universe where we're like we get worse? Because you'd like to think that we've gotten past slavery as a concept. Slavery still exists in horrible places in the world, but most decent people agree that slavery's bad. But this portrays a future.
Position.
It's funny.
What do you mean?
You can't take that position because you're looking at it like, I'm here in 2020, and well, 2049, could it possibly be like this? But that doesn't make sense. You have to start from the first movie and be like, if that's your starting point, if that's what 2019 is, and it continues.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, 2049
that's what I'm saying.
But be like that.
But I'm saying I flip back and forth in my mind, and as when I look at this as a real future, I'm like, that's fucked. That's just annoying.
you don't think it makes sense, or it's hopeless and you don't like it?
Both.
Okay.
I don't think it really makes sense that if we created artificial humans, that there wouldn't be like. You think that the vast majority of people would just be like, yeah, that's not a real person?
I think it really depends because on the one hand, they're trying to colonize other worlds and just the necessity of what's required there.
Yeah.
If society could just kind of recalibrate and adjust. And if it were...
Everybody becomes a utilitarian.
If they were going to allow that, they would treat the replicants like we see them be treated. You would hear they would be insulting them and treating and subjugating them because the difference between humans and is so immaterial. The difference between humans, and, so they have to just be so mean to them to kind of like manufacture this difference.
I know it just bothers me, but like I just have to shut off that empathetic part of my brain to like appreciate this movie because it's just like,
well, this is a world run by corporations where like there is no government; it's just corporations. Like Wallace is essentially the government of the world.
Just look how big his building is.
Yeah, I think that's what you. Yeah. I love that one shot of the miniatures when you see what was the Tyrell pyramids in the original that were huge, and then you see the Wallace building just dwarf it, right, 10 times bigger. It's so cool.
And all of that is just like on top of this understory of skyscrapers. Yeah. Like it's so huge. And I love how they use bigatures. Yeah. For bigature, they're miniatures, but they're huge. Just
physical
like
models.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Everything was in camera. Even when you're at Kay's apartment, there's a window, and you can see. Like basically a set outside the window. Yeah. Even that was
a real
was a set.
They built a full apartment.
Really,
on the other side.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
this was an expensive movie.
one more thing I wanted to say about the environment is that's why I appreciate the fact that there is like a replicant uprising or the beginnings of one in this movie because I'm like, sweet, I need some hope. Like I think in the original Blade Runner, I'm just like, the shit's fucked and it just stays that way. And he, like, in the end, Deckard kills Roy Batty, and maybe he learns something, maybe he doesn't.
He doesn't kill him, he dies.
He expires. He's still trying to kill him, you know? Anyways, not much changes in the universe, but in this one, at least we see the beginnings of, like, change can happen, and I feel like I like that.
Well, I think, though, that's, like, just, like, where the cultural discourse was the question posed is, are robots human? Are humans robots? And the point of that movie is for Deckard to realize how similar the replicants were to him, and that that final encounter is to be like they were human, or they had a soul, or whatever that means.
Change, yeah.
And that's why any cut with Deckard being a replicant is fucking stupid.
Oh, you don't like it?
It's fucking stupid. Because what's the point of a movie where a replicant realizes that other replicants are just like him?
Well, he doesn't know he's a replicant.
But it doesn't make any difference.
What do you mean?
It doesn't. So the whole point of the movie is for him to chase these replicants down, and by the end realize that like they're no different from him. But if he's a replicant, they are no different from him.
But if so presumably he doesn't know he's a replicant.
No,
and neither does anyone else.
Yeah. But then like the whole point of the movie would be, okay, yeah, I am a replicant, and like that's a fun twist, like cool, yay, twist.
But couldn't it put another layer on it where it's like, because of what I assume to be true about myself, I hold all these assumptions. Then those get subverted. Whoa, I learned something. And then they get subverted again, where it's like, dude, all that was just make believe because you were a replicant yourself to begin with. It's all a social construct.
But then I think it's too much flip flopping where none of his beliefs matter, and then that's like the movie isn't about do my beliefs matter. It's about how similar he is to those people. And I think that's like a much more interesting approach when the movie's taken that way.
I do think that, I agree with you that the movie is not helped by him being a replicant. So I find the whole question to be just kind of a waste of time, because it's like whether he's a replicant or not, if he is a replicant, he's not the normal type of replicant we see in the movie because he has an open-ended lifespan. All the replicants...
He would be a Nexus 7 like Rachel, if anything.
Well, I guess so, yeah. He would be a prototype. Well, no, she had a limited lifespan.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, she only lived 4 years. So if he is a replicant, he's like a super futuristic replicant. And if he's not, then nothing changes. So it's like...
It's silly.
But talking about 2049, though, I love how they let this decades-old debate rage on.
Totally.
Oh, so awesome. And Neander is like, oh, yeah, you fell in love with Rachel just as you were designed to. If you were designed. Close this book, you son of a...
I love it. It's brilliant. You can tell this movie was made with so much love and passion from the start. Like,
my gosh.
Like, such good thought and just passion.
And fear.
Out,
the fear of God, man. You can see Denis Villeneuve in many interviews is like, I was terrified. I didn't want to do this. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And now he's saying those exact same quotes for Dune, by the way. Just by the way.
I think this is the best looking movie ever. I think if people enjoy it or not, that's up to them.
Ever?
But I think it's undeniable. This is the best looking movie ever.
It looks great.
It looks great.
It looks
the CG is fantastic.
We watched the 4K version. Like, I watched this on Netflix, and the thing with Netflix is it has 4K content, but does it label it, or does it just?
It does label it.
Does it label it UHD?
Wait, you
or
did
does
watch
it just
it on?
does it just say high definition?
No. There's like HD label, and then there's a 4K HDR one as well.
Okay, because I've watched it on. It was on Netflix. Like a month ago, I watched this movie a bunch on Netflix,
really?
and then last night I went to watch it. And it just wasn't on Netflix. And then David shared us on the comp that he owns, which is 4K and HDR. And it was nicer than what I was watching on Netflix. And goddamn was it nice.
I was watching a VFX breakdown of this film. There's so much more CG than I realized. I was, because they tell us that everything's in camera, everything's practical, but everything is enhanced. There is like no scene, even like the junkyard scene. It's like, it's in a lot of the wide shots, maybe 30% of the frame is real and the rest is CG. And they do such an incredible job of like of mixing practical and CG that you never question.
Do you know what that set is called?
No.
It has the coolest name, Trash Mesa. The Trash Mesa.
So cool.
It is probably almost a football-sized field of rusted car parts and stuff. They got a lot of material there, literal tons of stuff. But the draw distance in the background is green screen CG.
Yeah, I was one of the things I was really focusing in on this watch was trying to find the CG seams, and like even the best movies like Endgame or whatever, like you can see the CG and like it's so overdone and so stylized. They're like that CG. In Blade Runner, it's hard.
There's one thing that stands
for me. There
out.
was 3, but give me your one.
Neander's little floaty guys, those little floaty camera fish. Yeah, those stand out.
Well, I mean,
as being a
like you're
couple
like
years old.
obviously those are CG because they couldn't do those practically.
And they could have had a little thing on a wire and remove the wire.
For me, the 3 was when Kay and Joy are in the rain and she grabs his hand and puts it towards her face. I could tell it was 2 separate shots that they weren't interacting. It just like didn't look right.
Right.
It was like they didn't track right or something. I said the floaty drone bots in the Wallace water office. And then when they shoot Rachel.
Yes.
That was so bad.
That's what I was
like,
say.
how did they do so bad on that one?
I was going to say that's the only part of the movie where I really noticed.
I want to talk about Joy
Yep.
and how they made Joy so sweet. You know how they did it?
No.
Because when you're watching her, you can see that she's like, you can kind of see through her sometimes. And the thing is, if she's transparent because she's like a hologram, if there's like when you're watching a movie on a projector, the brightest value is as bright as your projector can shine, and the darkest value is just as dark as your wall or your screen is, right? So when she's in her apartment, in Kay's apartment, and she's walking around, whenever there's a light source behind her, you can see that shine through more than her. And by the way, on that set, a lot of it was practical. So they actually had lights as part of the set that are lighting the scene. And if they added any lights on top of that, they're just kind of trying to accentuate what exists in the scene. So it's super realistic. When she's in front of the window or a light, it looks different than when she's not. Although I do have to say, she switches outfits a bunch in that scene.
Right.
And one of them, she switches into like a black dress. And I don't know how that thing would display black. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares?
The hologram?
Whatever. Yeah. If it's is she a projected image?
Yeah, she's a hologram.
Yeah. So how is it going to display black? I don't know.
I don't know, man. I'm sure they figured it out.
Also, this I don't even have an answer for this. She lights Kay's cigarette.
I can believe that. It's just a laser pointer where like there's enough light focusing that it heats up. I think that's realistic, where a projector that could create a full body hologram has enough power if it focused to light something on fire.
Yeah.
She probably can't do that with the Emanator.
No.
By the way, Emanator is a great name for that little device.
I don't know. Wait, okay. That's something that bothered me a little bit because I feel like in the rest of the Blade Runner universe, you can kind of see how things work a bit. But that one was like, wait, it's in his jacket.
Yeah, I don't know.
How is it?
It's not line of sight, right? Like when they're in the rain, he's not holding it like shining her. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
Shit, this movie just became a 6.
Game of 6. No, but
yeah, bring it back down to a 9.5, a reasonable rating.
Yo, check out how they made her though. So what they did was they filmed the scenes with her, right? She's on set, so there's no like wacky, like I'm talking to a tennis ball on a stick. The actors get the real reactions and everything like that. But then they also had all these like hidden GoPros and stuff like that to get extra footage so they could track her really accurately.
Oh.
And then they made a real 3D model of her, completely CG. And then what they did was they bifurcated that. They cut it in half, like in that movie 13 Ghosts, where that glass comes down and chops that dude. Anyway, so
what a reference.
And then they took what they call the back shell, and so if you look at like a wine bottle and you look through the wine bottle, you could see the label from the back.
Yeah.
They have that of her, and they put that into the scene. So when you're looking at her and there's other lights are bright, you can see kind of through her a little bit.
You can see her butt from the front.
Ass so fat you can see it from the front. My wife says that all the time.
That's so funny.
That is really cool.
Because they're filming the scene with the actors in the scene, that means that Ana de Armas, who plays Joy, her shadow is cast in the scene. So then that means that the hologram can cast shadows. Okay? Even though she's a hologram, she's casting shadows.
Yeah.
So then later when they have their like menage a trois thing, that means that when Joy's hands are on top of Mariette's hands, they have to cast shadows on each other's hands. But those actors' those actors weren't in the scene together. It's Kay and Mackenzie Davis's character. Then they film it again with Joy and Kay, and then in the final cut, they just take Joy and Kay and they put them on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
So how are they going to put shadows, the shadows from Joy's hands onto Mackenzie Davis's
Why wouldn't
hands?
they just remove the shadows?
So when their hands are melded over each other, what they had to do was make full CG just hands. Like there's a shot behind Kay's heads where like they're rubbing back his head. They had to do just CG hands just so they could render the shadows, then take those shadows and put them on the real hands.
That's dumb.
Stupid double negative.
No, that's stupid. Because like holograms shouldn't cast shadows unless there's some like physical, maybe.
No, dude. The shadows are part of the hologram.
Oh.
Here's a weird thing. Apparently Joy is, I don't know if this is true. I read that Joy is supposedly named after the slang porn acronym JOI, jerk off instruction, which is like
What?
like a genre of porn where I guess like the actor or actress is like telling the viewer what to do.
Right.
Do you guys think that is possible? It seems like a retronym to
that
me.
seems stupid.
Sounds like they named her Joy and then they just like, oh, whoa, it's just like that.
Well, who said that?
I just read it somewhere online.
I do.
The internet.
I do
I don't
love
think that was-
that Kay is like, I guess my name's Joe because that's what Joy has called me.
Yeah.
And then there's that scene once Joy has died and on the bridge and he sees the big advertisement version of Joy that's naked and like it's all this. It's this great scene of being like, oh, like the person I love was just this corporate thing that was sold to me, and she calls him Joe, and you're like, oh yeah, now that name fits because it's like a prostitute. That's what they call their client is a Joe. Because like when he first says his name is Joe, it always bothers me. I'm like, ew, what a weird,
I know,
what a stupid name.
It bothered me too because I'm like, if I was in this position and someone's like, well, a real boy needs a name, and he's like, doesn't respond, and then she's like, Joe. I'm like, no, my name is absolutely not Joe. No offense to anybody named Joe out there, but I'm like,
how about Casey?
Yeah, no, I'd be like, I am Aragorn.
Arnold. Yeah,
I'm gonna be Aragorn.
Yeah, name starts with a K. Just keep the K. That's at his like low point of his arc, like in the deep act 2, where it seems like there's no way you can achieve what your goals are. And I guess his inward journey, as it were, is, am I real? Am I human?
Right.
So that's where, he gets this girlfriend. That feels really real. He has these memories that he thinks are not implants. They're real memories. That feels really real. And then by that point, it's all gone to crap.
Yeah.
But then that's the point that I think part of it, and they don't really tell you on the nose, but that he feels this immense grief and this immense sense of loss, I think is what propels him to be like, oh, I am alive. I have purpose. Like I have a soul that I can feel these things instead of just feeling nothing.
I really like that line from Fraser where she's like standing up for something is the most human thing you can do. That was amazing. That was the most succinct and nice way to set up his
from Fraser.
final push.
I thought you said from Frasier.
Yeah, Kelsey Grammer.
I'm like Frasier, one of the most inspiring sitcoms of all time.
Tossed salad and scrambled.
Niles is like a personification of a whippet dog. You know those whippets?
Wow, yeah, I thought you were talking about Whippets, the other one. Ryan Gosling. What did you guys think of him in this movie? Because I wrote down that I thought he was perfect as a mix of like a kind of robotic, unfeeling replicant and someone who is like struggling with the like emergence of emotions in themselves.
Well, I think that's a really hard role to play, and like very few people can pull it off. Like you think of Spock, and Spock kind of is in that same situation where Leonard Nimoy has to play this very straight, logical being who has a very complex set of emotions going on underneath, and you have to display that while still being like stoic.
Yeah.
And I think that it's hard because then you see like Zachary Quinto do it, and like doesn't pull it off quite as well, and it's like a little bit overacted, and so it's
more
really
emotional.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And I think Ryan Gosling absolutely nails it.
Ryan Gosling just like that's kind of who he is.
Yeah.
Almost in every role, but they just slotted him in perfectly.
Well, that's kind of why I was saying he was perfect for this role because like memes have been made about his ability to, his acting ability just being basically like I stand there and have just like a blank stare on my face, and then like maybe I move one part of my face, and that's the performance. But I feel like that's what made him so perfect for this. But then, like, as you were saying, like, as he's discovering that he does have emotions, that he is a person, it's just like seeing kind of more of that come out. And man, I love the part where he's talking to Anna Stelline, the real child, and he's like apparently discovers that he's the child or whatever. He's not the child, but that's where he thinks
the memory is real.
Right. He thinks that the memory is real. He just like is looking down and just like explodes. He's like, God damn. And it's just like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like not only do I have emotions, I'm valid in feeling them now because he's such a repressed character who's like, if you have emotions, they're fake and contrived and they're not valid anyway because you're a skin job. I
didn't even really get that the baseline test where he comes in to do the baseline test every time he comes back from a mission or whatever. The prompts, I mean, this might be just because I was stupid. I'm not this isn't a
No. That scene is one of the most confusing things on the first view.
Because it seems like just a bunch of random words, but actually it's like all of these emotional prompts meant to like trigger emotional responses.
The structure of it is like, say something provocative.
Yeah.
The interviewer says something provocative. Do you know what it's like to touch a human hand?
Yeah.
Do they keep you in a cell? And then after he says the provocative line, he says a line that needs to repeat it back. So, do they keep you in a cage? Linked or interlinked? And then he has to say interlinked.
Yeah.
And then it's the calmness in his voice that gives away whether or not he's
that was also a thing that made me like angry at the system. I was like, come on, they're people. They're people, damn it. Yeah.
This is the kind of movie that makes me realize that video games haven't surpassed movies in every way, shape, and form.
Contrary to David's beliefs. Many a carpool ran from David about this.
Well, I think like video games are in a huge period of transition where they're going from being very simple mechanical ventures to complex storytelling machines that can convey really as much as a movie can, if not more. Like you think of something like Last of Us or God of War, and like they're telling their stories in very sophisticated ways. And in my head, I'm like, The Last of Us is the ultimate zombie story. There is no better movie, TV show, comic book, video game that's better than The Last of Us for telling a zombie story. But then I watched this and I'm like, Cyberpunk 2077 will not be more sophisticated than Blade Runner 2049. It will not.
Doesn't matter if the number's higher.
Well, but I think that's also because it has to appeal to the Call of Duty bros, sort of, you know? Like
That's fair.
Cyberpunk 2077 isn't like a smart man's game or whatever.
And
haven't
I hope
played
that
it.
it will. I hope.
Huh?
I mean, yeah, you're right. This
Well,
is all speculation. And maybe
If it's
in
like
a
The
year,
Witcher, you know, there'll probably be some allusions to deeper themes and stuff. But like for the most part, it's like you're just tearing your way through a city, blowing stuff up,
Yeah,
hacking people,
yeah.
making blades come out of
It'll
your
be
arms.
the altered carbon of video games.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's good.
Exactly.
It's pretty darn good.
Yeah, Cyberpunk 27 is the altered carbon of games. I love that. Yeah.
Can we talk about love?
Yeah.
What is love?
I
Don't hurt me.
What's
Baby,
it
don't
got
hurt
to
me.
do with it?
She's a badass.
I love
What's the
this.
actor name? Sylvia Hook. I think she's Dutch. I saw an interview with her. She's so different than Love IRL. She's,
Oh, yeah?
she's like, I hate fighting. I don't like moving very much. I'm a very gentle person.
I loved how I don't know. She's just got such this intense look, and I actually wrote. I'm like, her outfits are badass. I love her
Well,
outfits.
it tells a story. So
I
one
love
thing,
her ponytail.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I didn't realize is that at the beginning, all her outfits are white and clean lines, very, very sophisticated, and it's because like she's got a very pure sense of mind. Her purpose is please Wallace.
Right.
But as things are getting harder and she's getting like more descent into this kind of like darker, desperate place, her outfits get darker and like less clean, less defined.
Right.
And I love that they tell the story that way.
She's a reflection character to Kay. She's
Right.
going through similar things to him, but she handles them differently. She's the opposite. She always says to Kay things that reinforce the fact that they're not human, that they're objects. She
Yes.
says, bad dog.
Yeah.
And then she says, I'm the best one.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I'm the best. That was so
I'm the
great.
best one. I'm a product. I'm an object.
When
and
she
I'm the
thinks
best one.
when she thinks she's beaten him, and she's just like, I'm the best one. Like she swims away, like, haha, I gotcha.
Oh, she's so badass. though.
Daddy likes me best. Yeah, I love that she's kind of a foil to Kay because like she's got that same sort of stoicism and like some emotions burning underneath, but they're not like they're struggling to come out. She doesn't know how to express herself emotionally. So like every time that she kills somebody, she cries.
Yeah.
Like every time that she gets super intense, like she cries like a single tear. And I'm just like, what is that about? But it's like, oh, that's because the only way that she knows how to exist in this world is through violence and through like forcing other people to not necessarily get her way, but to get Wallace's way. And there's like a part of her that's like, this is wrong or whatever, or trying to express something, but she can't express it. So like it just comes out physically as a tear.
It makes you wonder if she has memories. Because they say that the memories are there to ground them emotionally.
Right.
But she's so weird emotionally. And
She probably has some like very specific tailored memories to make her that way or whatever.
and I love how she's like on the sales team. Like her first shot is a conference call.
Yeah,
Being
yeah.
like, well, you probably don't need really high consciousness replicants because you're doing a mining operation, but we can give you pleasure models.
Yeah.
I love how all the side characters are so weird. They're so weird looking. He uses that dude that Denis Villeneuve always has that one guy. His name is David Dasmalchian. He plays Coco. The character's name is Coco.
Oh, yeah.
He's actually he's kind of racist against Kay.
Right.
Yeah, he says
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe
He's like
separate.
maybe it's like a skin job or something. He's like, sorry.
Oh yeah, he says something like not
Oh,
bad
yeah.
for a skin job or like
Yeah.
emotional for a skin job. But then after that, he does another dig at him.
Yeah.
because he's saying, how did that? Where did the kid go? And he's like, maybe Sapper ate it. Like,
Yeah.
like they're cannibals.
Yeah.
That guy is so weird looking, man.
He's the one role that I remember that guy from. He's done a lot more, but like I remember him as being the kind of the Joker stand-in in The Dark Knight. He's like,
yeah.
he's one of the guy that dresses up as a cop. He's like one of Joker's goons.
He always plays like a mentally unstable person. He's in in Prisoners.
Oh, I've
Do you
seen
remember
that?
that?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to see Prisoners. You got to watch all Denis Villeneuve's movies in a
Okay.
weekend. Do it.
I'll try. Well, okay, so there are a couple just things I wanted to bring attention to. They're not like deep things or whatever, but when Kay goes to get the data from Wallace Corporation, they go into the like the more secure the archives or whatever that no one's been there in a while, and they store data in these glass balls.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was cool because right now they're doing a lot of research. Microsoft in particular is doing research with like storing data in glass, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like they figured it out, you know.
What do they call them in the movie? Bearings? Are they called?
Bearings. Because they spin around.
There's another thing that's weird in that scene is she's like, this is where we keep all the junk. And I just thought it was weird that she said junk. But then the door doesn't open.
Yeah.
And she has to like kind of force it open. And I was like, why do they do that?
I think
Did they
it's
just to set up her physicality?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of it, but it's also to show that no one goes back here.
Right.
These are like the forgotten archives, and this door hasn't opened in 10 years, 15
I think
years.
that's a great example of how tight. Like, I know I said it's too long, but like the movie makes the most of these things where they will show something happening and it's happening for multiple reasons. Like it's not indulgent in the way that they're like, I wanted to have, you know, a scene where she punches somebody and caves his head in just because like for the sake of it. Yeah. Like when Kay gets home and Joy is like, oh, I got a present for you or whatever. And then like Mariette, the prostitute comes in and he's like, oh, I got you a present. I want us to be together. I'm like, is this going to be like a titillating sex scene or whatever, like it just for the sake of it? But it's like, no, it's very important. Mariette has to be there in order for her to have that emotional connection later with Kay, and so she can put the tracker in his stuff.
Yep.
That's how they find him later.
Yep.
So it's just like, there's so many things where they resist the urge to just have a scene for the sake of it. It's always in service of something, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
The next thing that kind of bothered me was, well, not bothered me. The next thing that I thought was interesting was, why does the movie pretend that Joy sees out of her eyes?
What do you mean?
She's a hologram.
Oh,
so, like,
Joy. Yeah.
Joy, the
Yeah. So what do you mean? How do we know
so
that?
like at one point he's like looking into he's reading the DNA or whatever. He's looking in through the little goggles, and Joy comes in and like kind of phases through him and is like also looking down into it. But it's like you're just light. You can't see in there.
My explanation would be that her programming is to act as convincing as possible, and so her programming isn't so that she can see it; it's to convince him that she's looking at it.
But she reacts to what she's seeing in there.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of her programming, is to be like.
But how does she
to
know?
Convince him.
She can't see.
Well,
she can't see in there.
Well, this thing has sensors that I'm guessing.
I found a plot hole.
There's more. There's more plot holes than that, actually. Like, for example, how the hell does Love break into the LAPD twice?
Yeah.
She just easily gets into that like mortuary and steals the bones, and then later on she breaks into Joshi's office and kills her twice. And the LAPD is like one of the biggest buildings in the city. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's full of cops.
For the mortuary, I always figure that it's probably owned by some corporation, and it's like a separate building, and it's its own thing, and it's probably got less security because of this corporate world that we're in. Whereas the LAPD is more secure, and so she only has to break into that once.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways you could explain that, I guess. None of which are super satisfying, but like, oh, Wallace Corporation is so powerful that they can just do that, and then the police are too scared to do anything about it, or like she has something that scrambles the cameras or something. I don't know.
Why do you think why doesn't she kill Kay in Vegas? She just kind of maims him and leaves him to die. And then they take off.
Apparently that was going to be a longer scene where she just like frickin' beats him to like within an inch of his life. And then she's like, he's basically dead. So then she just takes off. Like she does actually the same thing later, but they cut a bunch of the fight scene. So it would make a little more sense if she like beat him to within an inch of his life and then took off. But
even then, she still like lives the opportunity. And you think as an efficient killing machine, she would just pop off to in his head.
I think she's also kind of a psychopath though, and she enjoys it, and she likes the idea that like I beat you, and I want you to know that I beat you as you bleed out.
That rings true to me.
Yeah.
My favorite shot with her is when she's actually saving Kay's life by doing those drone strikes. Like suddenly those strikes come out of nowhere, and then it cuts to her just like reclining on a chair,
getting
just
her
like,
nails done,
just luxuriously getting her nails.
That was great.
Nails done by the cameo from someone who makes the eyes in the first Blade Runner.
Oh, it's him.
Yeah. Yeah. But I just love how it's just so sweet. She's just like fire.
I was
this is awesome.
Yeah. It's like it's no big. And then the other thing was. This kind of goes into the thing I was talking earlier about how the world kind of bothers me. I wrote, the visuals are obviously amazing, but like, where are the plants? So, like, do people just forget about, well,
they can't exist in this world.
Yeah, but people don't want greenery anymore? People just change?
It's too expensive, man. Like that little thing of wood would have bought him a real horse.
Yeah, no, but I just mean regular plants. Like people don't have house plants.
It's too hard.
There's
they
no
can't
parks.
survive.
People
They can't survive.
Random thing about that scene where he gets
There's no parks board anymore.
He gets the wood like checked out and like carbon dated
Yeah.
by that guy who just like speaks in a weird voice and has like that really weird face.
That's the I'm the captain now guy.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie.
Me neither.
I haven't seen that movie, but I was watching a movie on the weekend and I was like, that's the guy. His name is Barkat Abdi. And it was this movie called Good Time with Robert Pattinson.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a random security guard character like gets the crap beat out of him. I was like, that's the guy from Later On. I know it. It was. I didn't know he's the I'm the captain guy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm the Blade Runner now.
Do you guys want to hear a weird connection from this movie to the previous one? So the
Yes.
production designer on this film, who was nominated for an Academy Award and I don't believe won.
No. They lost to
Dunkirk? No.
it might have
Shape
been
of Water. Shape of Water.
Shape
For
of
sure,
Water.
Shape of
for
Water.
production design?
Yeah, for sure.
Shape of Dava.
Shape of Water.
That's a mistake.
That's a crazy year, by the way. Like Dunkirk, Shape of Water, this, Get Out, Lady Bird.
And of all things, Shape of Water wins.
Yeah. Shape of Water. It's pretty good, but
didn't
it's
watch it.
not spectacular.
I didn't like it.
This is spectacular.
It was okay.
Okay, so the production designer on this, how he's connected to the previous one, he was one of the art department people on One from the Heart, Francis Ford Coppola's Las Vegas musical, which is a complete piece of shit. But he commissioned all of the neon signs for this Vegas strip that was all set.
Oh, yeah.
And then those neon signs became the neon signs from Blade Runner. And so that's how like those two got connected. But then that guy became the production designer for 2049, and it became full circle.
Oh, dang, dude.
Amazing.
There were no neon signs in this Vegas. They were just erotic statues,
Thank goodness.
which was kind of cool. I'm just like, oh, this makes sense that Vegas would just like put up a bunch of naked women statues.
This movie has such a good variety of styles because it's like there's some stuff that's very much like the old one, but then there's stuff like the desert with like the gradient orange red with the signs.
And in every style, they find a way to make the atmosphere full
Yeah.
of just reflective stuff. Because it's
Right.
like Denis didn't want it to be rain again. He wanted to make its own. So famously, he always says he made it snow because I'm from Canada. So yeah,
I know the snow.
I relate to the snow.
Yeah.
And then in the desert, they have all this, just the particle, like the dust storm kind of look.
I mean, in one sense, I find it kind of boring, but in another sense, I appreciate how so many of these different environments in the movie are just like monotone colors, basically. Like the city is just like gray, Vegas is orange. In the end, with all the snow, it's kind of like bluish, I guess.
I appreciate Harrison Ford in this movie.
Yeah.
When this movie was coming out, I hadn't even seen the first one. I was like, oh, I guess this is going to be okay. And then I heard that Harrison Ford was going to be in it, and I was like, crap, it's going to be shitty just like Star Wars. And then I was like, maybe he'll just have a cameo. Then he's on the poster big time, and I'm like, oh no, this is going to suck. I actually really liked him in this movie.
Well, when Harrison Ford cares, he's pretty good. He just doesn't ever care.
And his lines were good, too.
Yeah, it's really good. I wish, not just for this movie, but for all movies, that they could not give away spoilers like that in the posters.
I know.
Just like
They have to.
I know they have to, but like I
Imagine
want to
like
live in a
T2
world.
when T2 came out.
Yeah.
When Arnold's walking down that hallway and then the box of roses is a shotgun and then he doesn't shoot John.
Yeah, what
like,
a twist!
nobody knew. I don't think anyone knew that. I don't think that was in the trailer.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of like a necessary evil because
You got to
no
get
one's
bumps
gonna
in
go.
seats.
Yeah, no one's gonna go if
Nobody
they think
did
it's
go.
just like a spin-off. If they think it's what is it?
A reboot.
Born. What was the one with Jeremy Renner?
Born
Legacy.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Born yesterday.
yeah. They need to know that Harrison Ford is gonna play Han Solo once again in this.
Is
movie.
there an 80s movie that Harrison Ford was in where he hasn't reprised his role 40 years later? God damn, man.
I mean, I guess it's all right. I don't want to say this is Han Solo because it's not quite. Deckard is like more boring than Han Solo. He doesn't have as much
more
interesting.
understated.
Yeah, more understated.
Well, no, he's not.
And more brutal, too.
He's more well read. Read Treasure Island, clearly.
True.
Well, and
Mightn't you have a bit of cheese?
You don't say
always
mightn't
shoots
enough.
first.
Yeah.
They say that a lot in Barry Lyndon, a very good Kubrick movie. We should cover some Kubrick movies sometime, hey?
Well, we can do that in one of our director polls.
No one's going to pick.
They would never pick.
No
Barry
one's
Lyndon.
going to
It'll
pick.
be
Barry Lyndon's sweet,
like
though.
it'll be
Clockwork
The Shining.
Orange.
The Shining for sure.
Yeah,
Clockwork Orange,
yeah.
Shining, or 2001. I'd say The Shining.
And put
would
Barry
win.
Lyndon in there just so no one can pick it.
Well, what should we do next week? It's Edgar Wright's birthday this Saturday.
I feel like we promised people
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club.
But it's John Hughes' birthday was like 2 months ago.
Who
cares about that?
I care.
And then we have to wait a year.
I want to send the podcast to John Hughes as a present.
So I think next week we're going to do Breakfast Club. We promised Breakfast Club. We should do it. We have to deliver on the
I'm
Much
promises.
shorter movie.
Is it? 90 minutes or something?
It's like 2 hours.
You can fit 2 Breakfast Clubs. Breakfast Club is 2 hours, you think?
Probably just under. I don't know exactly, but I guess 150, 155.
All right, guys, that's the David's bet of the week. We'll have to look that up later to see how well he did. If you guys want to suggest what movies you want us to cover, then hit us up on Twitter at Carpool Critics or email us carpoolcriticspodcast@gmail.com.
James will reply. Maybe.
It's usually me. Log into the Twitter, you jerks.
I reply to people on the Twitter account from my own account.
David, you're always watching movies all weekend. Tweet about them when you watch them. That's what I do.
So embarrassed. It's not social media savvy.
I'm just embarrassed. Well, I guess there's nothing else to say except love you so much, and I said it this time.
See you later.
Bye.
David just doesn't say anything. He doesn't have a phrase.
You gotta have a phrase, David.
Sham bam ba doo dow.
Zippity doo dah.